The FBI recently found shocking new information about the death of Betsy Arakawa, Gene Hackman's wife. These new details could change everything we thought we knew about her last days. Just when the case seemed to be over, forensic experts found important new evidence that raises new questions about how she really died. What did the FBI find, and why is this news sending shockwaves through the investigation? Stay tuned as we dig deeper into the mystery surrounding Betsy Arakawa's death. To fully understand the woman behind the news stories about her death, let's take a closer look at her amazing life, from her early years to her rise as a devoted wife and partner. Betsy Arakawa was born into a stable middle-class family, but she knew from a young age that the world would not just hand her success. Her parents, who were second-generation Japanese Americans, were known for their strong work ethic and quiet resilience. Their family had a good life and was financially stable. They taught their daughter that hard work and determination were the only ways to be successful. From a young age, Betsy was said to be very driven, always having high hopes for herself and wanting to go beyond what was normal. However, as a Japanese American woman growing up in a time when cultural prejudices were still common, Betsy knew all too well the subtle but persistent barriers that came with her identity. Reports say she often felt stuck between two worlds, never quite American enough in some places and not quite tied to traditional Japanese expectations either. At school, she was praised for being smart and hardworking, but some teachers and peers reportedly didn't think she would go the traditional route. Betsy, on the other hand, had other plans. She knew she had to dream big and was ready to put in the work to reach her goals, even though she had grown up in a comfortable environment. When Betsy was young, she worked in fitness centers, at reception desks, and in other jobs that gave her the chance to network and get real-world experience. But music was her true passion. From a young age, she was drawn to the piano, and over the years, she practiced her skills with great discipline. As she got older, her connections in the entertainment and arts world started to form through a mix of talent, persistence, and luck. Strategic networking put her in touch with people in the business world who introduced her to Gene Hackman. The love story. How Betsy met Gene Hackman and their hidden struggles in the 1980s. Betsy was a talented classical pianist with big dreams. Music had been the center of her life, but she had to work at a fancy fitness club in Los Angeles, which is where she met Gene Hackman. At the time, Hackman was already a Hollywood star, an Oscar-winning actor known for his powerful roles. Their meeting wasn't a Hollywood spectacle. There weren't any big gestures or instant declarations of love, but there was something undeniable between them. Hackman, who knew how to navigate the shallow world of Hollywood, was unexpectedly drawn to Betsy's quiet grace. Unlike many women who were fascinated by his fame, she treated him with the same respect and warmth she showed everyone else. She was smart, poised, and beautiful. He was interested in her air of confidence as an artist who was deeply passionate about her work. Their relationship grew quietly, without the attention that usually comes with celebrity. Unlike many celebrity marriages, which demand public approval, Betsy and Hackman chose a different path. Their wedding was an intimate, almost secretive event without the showiness that usually comes with Hollywood nuptials. While their relationship may have been built on the weight of Hollywood's scrutiny, living in Hackman's world meant that Betsy and Hackman would always be looked at closely. The age difference between them became a popular topic of conversation, with many people wondering how they could stay together. For Betsy, the move into Hackman's world wasn't easy. She had spent her whole life working on her art, going to places where creativity was valued for its own sake and not for its commercial value. Hollywood, with its constant demands and constant media presence, was a whole different animal every time she went public. She was always there for Hackman, but he was torn between the world that made him famous and the one he wanted to build with Betsy. Fame had become like a golden cage for him, and his love for Betsy made him want a life that wasn't ruled by red carpets and studio contracts. By the early 2000s, Hackman's relationship with Hollywood was starting to fall apart, and his body, worn down by decades of physically demanding roles, was showing signs of wear more than ever. There was an undeniable sense of disappointment growing as he realized that the industry he had dedicated so much to no longer held the same appeal. In 2004, he made the huge decision to retire. For someone whose whole life had been based on acting, this was not an easy choice, but with Betsy by his side, he saw a future beyond the screen, one that wasn't ruled by scripts or directors, but by the simple joys of life, a love story in New Mexico and a life of quiet devotion. Betsy also made a huge sacrifice. She gave up the music career and the dream she had been working toward for years to support him in this new phase of his life. Their new life in New Mexico was very different from the one they had known before. There were no personal chefs or huge mansions with staff taking care of all their needs. They turned away from the extravagances that often come with being rich in Hollywood and instead chose to live a simple life. Their days were filled with the sound of nature. According to friends who visited their home often, Hackman's health started to get worse over the years. Betsy knew the risks and knew what was going to happen, but she refused to let fear ruin the life they had built. In fact, she became even more careful with him. Despite his worsening health, their love stayed the same or even grew stronger. Even when they were sleeping, they were said to hold hands as if they were unconsciously attached to each other. Even in the dead of night, they wouldn't let go. Their last days were peaceful, filled with the glow of golden sunsets and the gentle presence of their beloved dogs. To those who knew them, they seemed content to spend the last chapters of their lives together. But then, all of a sudden, everything changed. No one could have predicted what was about to happen. On the morning of February 26, 2025, the FBI responded to a call about a possible murder. A maintenance worker called the police because Gene and Hackman's residence in New Mexico hadn't responded to their calls. Given Gene's advanced age and well-known health problems, there was growing concern that something was amiss. When the police arrived, they did a preliminary search of the property and quickly found a disturbing scene. Gene Hackman was found in the mudroom, which is usually used as an entrance from the outside to the main living area. His position suggested a sudden collapse, possibly while he was trying to move to another part of the house. Betsy Arakawa's body was found in a bathroom near the front door. The body's placement raised immediate questions. It suggested she may have been trying to leave the house or call for help but was unable to do so because it was so close to the door. Investigators wondered if she had died while she was on the way. The condition of the remains made the investigation even more difficult. There was decomposition, and the hands and feet were mummified, which happens when something is exposed to a dry environment for a long time. The mummification suggested that the bodies had been undiscovered for a long time, though the exact timeline was still unknown. Hackman's death was further investigated by looking at what he was wearing when he was found. He was wearing sweatpants, a long-sleeved t-shirt, and slippers, which were casual clothes that suggested he had not planned to be dead. There were no signs of distress or immediate defensive injuries, which pointed to a sudden and possibly internal medical event. This was a significant detail because it meant that whatever had happened had not been a long fight or interference from outside sources. Instead, Hackman seemed to have been caught off guard and had little time to react or get help. A bottle of thyroid medication was also found open next to Betsy Arakawa's body. At first glance, this could have been a possible overdose or reaction, but a preliminary investigation ruled out the medication as a factor in her death. One of the most upsetting things found in the house was Zena, the couple's dog, dead in a crate in a closet. At the time, the cause of death hadn't been determined, which led to a lot of rumors and speculation. As the investigation went on, authorities tried to piece together Hackman and Arakawa's last days and what had happened in their isolated home. Was Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's deaths caused by natural causes, or was there something else that had not been found yet? The investigation into their deaths quickly turned into a confusing mystery, with more questions than answers. As soon as police entered the home, strange things started to happen. The most noticeable was that the doors had been left unlocked, and there were no signs of forced entry or an intruder. This alone made the investigation more complicated. If there had been foul play, there would have probably been signs of a break-in or a fight. But everything inside the house looked like it had been empty for a long time. One of the first worries was that the couple might have died of carbon monoxide poisoning, which is a silent but deadly poison that could have happened to them without warning because Hackman is old and has a known heart condition. It was a plausible theory that they might have died from an undetected gas leak while sleeping or resting, but forensic teams quickly ruled this out. Tests of the air quality and gas lines showed no signs of leaks or dangerous exposure. The fact that no damage had been done to any household appliances added to the proof that carbon monoxide had not been a factor. With environmental factors ruled out, investigators turned their attention to medical exams. Full autopsies were ordered to find out the physiological causes of death. The couple's mummified limbs showed that they had been dead for a long time. Before they were found, pathologists carefully looked at how the organs were breaking down, the toxicology results, and any possible signs of poisoning or infection. Because their cases were so complicated, the first results were not conclusive and needed more testing and analysis. One of the most important pieces of evidence came from an unexpected place: Hackman's pacemaker. Modern medical devices like pacemakers record information on heart activity, and forensic analysts were able to get important information from them. Information about his last moments. The records showed that Hackman's last recorded heart activity was on February 18, 8 days before their bodies were found. This put a definitive date on his death and gave investigators their first solid piece of the puzzle. At the same time, reports said that Arakawa had been seen alive and well on February 11, running errands in town. This discrepancy brought up another question. Had she died before or after Hackman? If before, who had been caring for him in his last days? The time between their deaths left investigators with unsettling questions. For example, if Arakawa had died first and Hackman had been left alone in the house, struggling to take care of himself in his weak state, he could have died of dehydration or complications from an untreated medical event. On the other hand, if Hackman had died first, what could have caused Arakawa to die so soon after? Could she have died of grief shock or an undiagnosed condition before she could get help? As the days went by and no clear cause of death was found, speculation began to run wild. Several theories were sparked by the strange events, turning what had been a peaceful love story into an unsettling mystery. One of the first and most popular rumors was that Hackman may have hurt his wife during a moment of cognitive decline or confusion before killing himself. Given his advanced age and reported memory loss, some think he may have had an episode of violent dementia, a sad and rare condition in which a person acts violently while losing their memory. People with severe Alzheimer's often act aggressively or erratically. It's possible that Hackman attacked Arakawa out of the blue and then passed out days later. However, the facts did not support this theory. There were no signs of trauma on either body, no defensive wounds, and no evidence of a struggle. Arakawa had not sustained any blunt force injuries, and there were also no signs that she had been strangled or suffocated. The home itself remained unoccupied and showed no signs of a fight. Hackman had been losing his mind, but there was no proof that he had been violent with his wife. Since there were no physical signs, the murder theory quickly lost credibility as investigators tried to figure out what had happened. Another theory suggested that the couple had been killed by an unknown third party. Some thought it might have been a robbery gone horribly wrong, while others wondered if they had been abducted. The house was broken into for unknown reasons, possibly by someone out for revenge or money, but again, the evidence didn't support these claims. As the medical examiners continued their work, they finally found out that Hackman had died of heart disease and complications from advanced Alzheimer's. His pacemaker data showed that his heart had stopped beating on February 18, which was the same day that forensic experts said he died. On the other hand, Arakawa had died from Haravis pulmonary syndrome is a rare but deadly illness caused by exposure to rodent-borne pathogens. The Hant virus, which is spread by contact with rodent urine or saliva, can cause severe respiratory failure in humans. This shocking news initially raised more questions than it answered. How had she gotten such a rare disease? At the time, there were no answers. But as investigators dug deeper, new information came to light that shed light on the dark truth about how Betsy got hay virus. As they looked into what happened with Betsy Arakawa's sudden death, they found disturbing evidence that pointed to a silent but deadly threat lurking in the property. The house itself looked well kept and clean, but a close inspection of the surrounding structures, including a detached storage shed and an unused part of the property, showed clear signs of rodent activity. Droppings, nesting materials, and gnaw marks showed that rodents had been there, likely for a while. Hant virus pulmonary syndrome is a rare but deadly disease that is mostly spread by rodent urine and feces. Unlike other viral infections that are spread through direct contact with humans, Hant virus is contracted by breathing in contaminated dust, which makes it especially dangerous in places where rodents can get into closed spaces. You don't even have to touch an infected animal for the virus to infect you. You only have to breathe in microscopic particles. Medical experts confirmed that it's scary how quickly the Hant virus can spread. The first symptoms may look like the flu, but within 24 to 48 hours, the virus can quickly turn into severe respiratory distress, organ failure, and in many cases death. The fact that Arakawa's death happened so quickly fits with what is known about how aggressive the disease is. As news of the investigation spread, people were shocked and confused, with many asking how such a terrible thing could have happened. Someone wrote, "This is disturbing. It's tragic that something so avoidable took her life." As the FBI looked into the case more, they found an even more shocking detail about Betsy Arakawa's death that completely changed the nature of the investigation. New information. Did Betsy really die on February 11th? Earlier reports said that she had died on February 11th, but new evidence from her cell phone records has changed the timeline, according to the FBI data retrieved from multiple calls. To a medical concierge service were found on her phone on February 12th. This important discovery, which was confirmed by the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, led authorities to believe that she died later than they first thought, most likely in the evening of February 12. The new timeline sheds new light on Arakawa's last hours that week. She had called a private medical clinic to express concern about her health, even though she wasn't a regular patient there. She had also made an appointment, scheduled for February 12th, but she called off on February 10 because she had to take care of her husband. On the morning of February 12th, she called again and said she had congestion, but didn't say she was having trouble breathing or shortness of breath. Joshua Child, the lead doctor at the clinic, later said, "I think she was starting to feel sick, which is why she reached out to us." Betsy called the clinic several times that morning to set up a new appointment for later that afternoon, but she never showed up, even though she confirmed the appointment. When the clinic tried to follow up with her later that day, she did not answer the phone. One particularly troubling thing about these calls was that Betsy asked about what the clinic called esoteric treatment, but she did not explain what she meant by this. Investigators haven't decided yet if this has anything to do with her. Her death was still linked to Haravirus pulmonary syndrome, but the extra day in the timeline brings up more questions, like whether she was still alive on the 12th, whether she was already in distress when she called for help, or whether the virus spread so quickly that she was unable to do so before she could get help. People are very upset about these new details on social media, with many expressing shock at how the last hours of her life unfolded. Someone wrote, "This is so sad. She clearly knew something was wrong and was trying to get help, but it was too late." Gene Hackman's death was still caused by severe heart disease with advanced Alzheimer's disease as a contributing factor. Experts think that his cognitive decline may have kept him from realizing that his wife had died in the same house where he was living. If he did realize it, they told the BBC that he probably tried to wake her up many times while being confused and sad before getting too upset or forgetting what had happened. This cycle of distress may have continued for days until he finally died. A necropsy report also revealed another sad fact. One of the couple's 3 dogs, who had been left alone in a crate while recovering from surgery, died of hunger and thirst. Since the official causes of death for Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa have been confirmed, most of the public's attention has turned away from Tucker. While the mystery surrounding their deaths has mostly been solved, well-known people like Tucker Carlson and Jesse Waters have focused on the tragic events that led to them being alone and suffering in their last days. Tucker Carlson has criticized what he sees as a failure of the healthcare system to act earlier, saying that Betsy Arakawa's death was caused by a lack of access to medical care for older people. Many calls to a medical concierge service show that the system often ignores the urgent needs of the elderly. She called for help, made appointments, and rescheduled them, but she still died alone in her home. "If this isn't a failure of modern medicine, I don't know what is," Carlson said in a recent broadcast that the haunt virus is rare but not unheard of, and that she could have been saved by early medical intervention if she had been seen and treated in time. Jesse Waters has taken a different approach, focusing on the role of cognitive decline and the vulnerability of aging public figures. He used Gene Hackman's advanced Alzheimer's to show how he probably spent days in confusion, unable to deal with his wife's death or get help for himself. Here is a man who had spent his life as a strong figure on screen, reduced to a state where he couldn't even recognize what was going on around him. How many other elderly Americans are going through the same thing? Waters said that Hackman's case was typical. This story is a sad reminder of the silent epidemic of Alzheimer's and dementia diseases that take away people's ability to make important decisions when they need help the most. Both Carlson and Waters have used this case to bring up larger societal concerns, with Carlson talking about how easy it is for older people to get emergency medical care. While there is no longer any doubt about the physical causes of their deaths, their story has started a new conversation about whether society is doing enough to protect its aging population from the tragedy that could have been avoided. That's all from us for now. What do you think about these recent events? Please let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.